There's Pisces engravings at Ephesus. Ichthys is a Greek gematria code for Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. Iota Iesu, Jesus, Chi, Ch, Christos, anointed. Theta, Th, Theo, of God, the genitive singular of the O sigma, Theos, God. Epsilon, Y or U, H, Uios, 11, Y Hyos, Son, Sigma, S, Soter, Savior. We'll see more deriving Jesus Christ from gematria below. We know the precession of the equinoxes was mathematically established by Hipparchus around 130 BC. As I showed about the Aratus phenomenon, the mathematical science quickly gets mythologized. 130 BC is certainly early enough before the right-wingers would begin to mythologize the precession of the equinoxes. The best evidence for Jesus Christ as the heralder of a new age is in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 29 verse 20, and surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Other mentions of age are Matthew chapter 12 verse 32, Matthew chapter 13 verse 39, Matthew chapter 24 verses 3 to 1 Corinthians 3:18, 1 Corinthians 10:11. A passage from Dionysius Bar Salabi shows that the Christians changed the birthday of Jesus from January 6 to December 25. The Lord was born on the month of January, on the day we celebrate the Epiphany. The reasons why the fathers changed the feasts from January 6 to December 25 was as follows. According to festive custom, the pagans were accustomed to celebrate the feast of the rising sun on December 25. They let the Christians participate in these festivities. And to this day Christians have maintained this custom. Some want to disregard this because the passage was actually written by some Syrian monk. Whoever did this did it around the same time as the life of Dionysius Bar Salabes. And they want to say this is a late date to mention this 1200 AD. But we can find mention of celebrating Jesus Christ's birth at January 6 much earlier. There's a calculation from Clement of Alexandria, Stromata, I-21. He calculates Jesus' birth from the death of a Commodus, plus you have to add 49 intercalary dates, leap days. There's more explicit statements. And Epiphanius, bishop of Salamis who died in AD 403 states Greeks, I mean idolaters, celebrate this day on the 8th before the calends of January, December 25, which Romans call Saturnalia, for this division between the signs of the zodiac, which is a solstice, comes on the 8th before the calends of January, and the day begins to lengthen because the light is receiving its increase. And it completes a period of 13 days until the 8th before the Ides of January, January 6, the day of Christ's birth. Panarion, Refutation of All the Heresies, IV.22.5-6. The reason why there's a January 6 tradition and a December 25 tradition is because of the precession of the equinoxes. At one time, the constellations of the sun gods arose on the solstice around January 6. Then, when they made up Jesus Christ, the solstices, equinoxes moved to December 25. When they wanted to convert the pagans to Christianity, they had to change their celebration from January 6 to December 25. More proof that Hellenistic society was conscious of a new age are these two BC time passages. The providence which rules over all has filled this man with such gifts for the salvation of the world as designated him as Savior for us and for the coming generations. Of wars he will make an end, and establish all things worthily. By his appearing are the hopes of our forefathers fulfilled. Not only has he surpassed the good deeds of earlier times, but it is impossible that one greater than he can ever appear. The birthday of God has brought to the world glad tidings that are bound up in him. From his birthday a new era begins. Now for the Virgil passage from his Eclogue 4 inches, come are those last days that the Sibyl sang, the ages might march begins anew. Now comes the Virgin, Saturn reigns again, now from high heaven descends a wondrous race. Thou on the newborn babe who first shall end. That age of iron, bid a golden dawn. Upon the browed world chaste Lucina, smile, now thy Apollo reigns. Whatever the case may be with the mythologizing of the precession of the equinoxes, Alexander the Great has ram's horns. There's lots of artwork and mythology of bulls. I can't help sharing this stunning Minoan bull's head sculpture. Serapis is a combining of Osiris and Apis. Apis being a bull god. Hadrian equated Christians as Seropsis worshippers, from Hadrian Augustus to Servianus the consul, greeting. The land of Egypt, the praises of which you have been recounting to me, my dear Servianus, I have found to be wholly light-minded, unstable, and blown about by every breath of rumor. There those who worship Serapes are, in fact, Christians, and those who call themselves bishops of Christ are, in fact, devotees of Serapes. There is no chief of the Jewish synagogue, no Samaritan, no Christian presbyter, who is not an astrologer, a soothsayer, or an anointer. Even the patriarch himself, when he comes to Egypt, is forced by some to worship Serapes, by others to worship Christ. We know that Serapes was invented by Ptolemy I Soter, the inheritor of the city of Alexandria after Alexander the Great's death. The fighting between different Greek factions formed after Alexander the Great's death allowed the Romans a foot in the door. They took it. The Romans were only interested in political power, money, and alcohol. They were interested in religion to keep people farming, making weapons, and beer and wine. The Romans didn't produce one mathematician. As Cicero says, geometry was in high esteem with them, the Greeks, therefore, none were more honorable than mathematicians, but we have confined this art to bare measuring and calculating. Like Cicero, who was maybe a kind of rational philosopher-politician, there was a Roman rational science philosopher, Lucretius. But his On the Nature of Things was just a poem of Greek atomic cosmology. This was the extent of any Roman scientist. Lucretius did recognize the difference between rational philosophy and religion, or politicized mythology. This terror then and darkness of mind must be dispelled not by the rays of the sun and glittering shafts of light, but by the aspect and law of nature. As we'll see, this warning fell on deaf ears. We began this Iron Age section with the Hebrews and Greeks being the two main cultures that came out of it. After 1,000 years, the Romans ruled the Mediterranean. If you knew that mythology combines previous cultures into one god to rule them all, and saw one culture rule over all previous cultures, like the Romans over the Hebrews, Greeks, and Egyptians, you should hypothesize a new single god created. And look what we find, Jesus Christ. And look here, there's an Old Testament created by the Hebrews, and a New Testament created during Roman times.